Hi everybody, and welcome to episode 107 of the I Rock Knits podcast. My name is Cori Eichelberger, and it is Sunday afternoon. I am 3 weeks post-op from my hip replacement surgery, and I am doing much better. I'm getting around now with just a cane instead of a walker, working up strength in that right leg. It is a windy, sunny Sunday afternoon outside here, so we have the windows all closed up. I have been having a little bit of allergy something this fall, the dust or something. I've been sneezing and blowing my nose. Just mostly sneezing, which is strange for me, but the leaves are turning here in the upper Midwest. I'm coming to you from the Minneapolis-St. Paul area of Minnesota, which is kind of in the middle of the state, but definitely we are looking at fall. We did have a little bit of snow on the ground one morning a couple weeks ago, where we just got some precipitation overnight, and we woke up to some white on the lawns. It melted well by noon, but it was shocking. And then you say, oh, it's coming. I do believe that living in Minnesota and having 4 really strong seasons allows you to really appreciate them all, right? Nobody appreciates summer like a Minnesotan because we've come through winter and mucky spring. And so I think we're all very appreciative. I think that's true just about anything in life, right? If you go through something, you can be so much more appreciative. I think maybe I'm feeling that way because of my health. I'm so happy that they can fix my orthopedic issues. If you are new here, welcome, but I have had 5 surgeries in the last 4 years since 2018. I have had my knee replaced. I got 2 new little thumb joints, and I had a plantar tear in my foot that I had to have fixed. And now recently I had a hip replacement. So it has been a bit of a struggle at our house, just because I continue to have these issues, but I'm trying to remain so thankful that it's all fixable. And when you go in, they say, well, we can try this, and then we can fix it. So I just need to remain thankful. A lot of people have reached out, and I want to thank you all for your well wishes and your kind thoughts about me. I tried to respond to some of you in the comments, but didn't get to everyone. Once I had the surgery, the first 2 days were not bad at all, but then it got hard for about 5 days. I had some medication issues, some tummy trouble. I had 9 prescriptions to fill after my surgery. And they cover all, they cover everything, but they say, stay on top of your pain. So I definitely had, a narcotic, oxycodone, but then I had Zofran for stomach upset and nausea, and I have to take an aspirin, 2 little aspirin every day to prevent a blood clot. And then I had Colace for a stool softener, and then I had an antibiotic that I had to take for a day. And what else did I have? Oh, I had a Celebrex, which is an anti-inflammatory. And then I had a Vistral, which is a booster to help with the anti-inflammatory. So if you don't want to take the one, you can take the other. And you're just managing all the symptoms of all those things. And eventually you just say, after about day 3, you just say, I can't take any more of this. And yeah, I have a very sensitive stomach, and it was not happy there for a few days. I am still ridiculously fatigued, and I'm just wondering what that's all coming from. I did start a new antidepressant medication in the last couple of weeks. And if you've been with me for a while, you know that I had a ton of side effects from one that I was taking. And so we had gone off that one and started a new one, which was not working. And so then I went off the new one and started a new one. So I'm wondering if that's not my issue. I have a appointment tomorrow to talk to my psychiatrist and psychologist about that. But I am napping every afternoon. I'm sleeping. I don't think I'm sleeping poorly at night, but I don't wake up rested at all. So every afternoon I am so fatigued by about 3 o'clock. And I know that I had a major surgery, but I feel like I could maybe do without an afternoon nap at this point. A lot of you asked if the hip was easier than the knee, and people are bound to say that. They say, you know, oh, hips are easier than knees. And maybe, yes, my recovery has been a little shorter, but it is still a replacement. They're still going in and taking out bones and replacing them with bones. It's still, my incision is about this long, not 10 inches. It's all the way up the side of my hip. I would say the incision healing has been a little rough too. I got my bandage off after 2 weeks. They put a permanent like bandage on for 2 weeks so you can shower and everything. It completely covers, it's like coated, sealed. So I went and took that off, and then when she reapplied the steri strips, some of my incisions started to open a little bit, pull apart in a couple spots. So then we were managing that, and then it feels like, if you're a knitter, maybe you'll understand that, feels like it was seamed too tight. Like the interior stitches on the inside are pulling and it's lifting a little. The seam is a little lifted. Like if you pull something together and it just goes up a little bit. It's not like a keloid or anything, but it's definitely tight and it pulls. And I have been having some Charlie horse issues where my entire thigh and groin cramp up when I walk too much. I have absolutely no restrictions, so I should be able to just, walk and get in and out of the car and do those things, because I do have permission to drive, and once you're off the narcotic. But yeah, it's the recovery is just, and I'm 61. Thanks for reminding me, Pat. So the recovery has just been, I would like to say that I am up and around, and I am. I'm going places. Last week I went somewhere almost every day. It's just that it fatigues me. And so that's why I didn't podcast. All that to say, I just decided to skip a week, one of the episodes, because I just wasn't feeling up to it. The first few days on a narcotic, and I don't know if others have felt this way too, it just really affected my brain. My husband would come and say, do you want a piece of toast? And I couldn't decide. Like, I would just look at him like, And I only took narcotics 2 nights. So the night that I was in the hotel, because we went to a hotel the night after, which is it's a concierge service that they offer through my orthopedic center, where there's a nurse on the floor with you, and she just monitors you, helps you with your medication, help you get up to go to the bathroom the first couple times. You just make sure that you're, functioning. Hey, bud. And that's just really nice for my husband, because then he gets to sleep in a hotel bed. We order food off the menu from the restaurant downstairs. The nurse comes in multiple times throughout the evening. The physical therapist comes over across the street, meets with you. Then the occupational therapist comes over, make sure you have, any adaptive devices you might need. They, help you walk with a walker. And then the next morning you go home, and you do have a block for a period of time. So you really are not in significant amounts of pain. And we did that for my knee. I had the option, and I just decided that would be the best thing. So we did that. We went ahead and did the hotel the night after. They find that people recover better when they go to the hotel, rather than being in a hospital or going home. They just get better recovery results. And so that's what we did. So knock on wood, will everyone keep their fingers crossed that Corey has no more orthopedic issues for a year? I did have to cancel a couple of teaching gigs, which is a real bummer for me. Just made me sad. But I hope to start teaching here again in November. I have a couple of in-person classes that are coming up at Stephen B in November. And then I'm doing a family and learning center program for moms with small children in a low income situation community where they provide classes. And so I'm going to teach beginning knitting to those gals here coming up in November. So yeah, that's where I'm at with my hip replacement. The other giant news that we have at the Eichelberger Casa is that Kiley passed the bar. So I am just tickled to tell all of you that my daughter went through law school. Okay, I had to get the dog settled. She is currently working for the Minnesota Court of Appeals with a judge and the two other girls, young ladies who work in her office also passed, and so they got to go in and tell the judge together that they all had passed, which was lovely. She does not have to have passed in order to work where she's working because she will not have clients, and so she will be considered an attorney at law now. You're a lawyer once you get your Juris Doctorate, and then when you pass the bar you become an attorney at law or esquire, and we're just tickled that it's done. Because for years, I mean, probably since Kiley was in high school, we have talked about law school and whether or not that would be for her and what she wanted to do. And then she went to Grinnell in Iowa. And now I have a little low battery, so I'm gonna have to pause and come back. But she went to Grinnell where she did a lot of writing, and that is currently what she is doing in the Court of Appeals as well. It's just fascinating the things that we're learning. So there are 16 judges and 32 clerks, but a couple of the clerks did not pass the bar. So that was really sad because she saw a girl crying on the day that they found out, and she said she didn't even want to follow her into the bathroom because she just, you know, how hard that would be to not. So they can retake it in February and July every year. But Kiley said, like, working full-time and studying for the bar would have just been so hard, Mom. I just don't know that I could have done it. But my husband has been officing upstairs in a bonus room in our house since the pandemic kind of, well, he worked in the office for a long time, but now he's home a lot of days of the week. And he has to walk across this little walkway because our family room is 2-story right there. Anyway, so he walks across. And I've been laying in the chair for 3 weeks now. I sit with my foot up, I was icing and whatever. So he would walk across and he would say, Kiley passed the bar. And then he would walk back and he would say, our daughter passed the bar, for about 3 days, because it was just, we were holding our breaths, right? Like you trust that she studied and did everything she could, but the pass rate for the bar, depending on the year, can be anywhere from like the 60 percentile up to 80. Like it can, there are years where the bar has been really hard to pass and you never know. And so we're just so thankful that she's done. We've always talked about him retiring and doing a passion job once she got through school and she was set up and moving through that. But basically she gets a case every week and she writes a bench memo to the judges. So she studies a case that's been appealed, and in Minnesota you can appeal anything, and so they see tons of cases, and she has to look back and make sure that the law was followed and everything was done according to the law. And then she writes a 10-page document as a recommendation to a panel of 3 judges, and then those judges rotate, so she'll get to work with all the judges on the court. And they look at her recommendation and they review it, and then they make a decision based on her notes and what she has looked up. And then they decide whether or not, number one, they want to see the case in person, meaning they need some oral arguments from the lawyers that yes, there is possibly an appeal there, or they don't need to see the lawyers in person, but they can see them just in writing, so the lawyers can do a written appeal, or they say that they're not going to see it. And then Kiley would get the case back and she would have to write back up what the decisions were of the judges, and then she does that again. So she gets a case, then some of the cases are easy and some are really hard, and they're all learning. I just find it fascinating that a judge's job is definitely a give back scenario to a community. When you're a judge, you're not going to make the same like money that you maybe could make in a corporate. And then they also train up all these young lawyers. Like every single year, Kiley's judge gets 2 new clerks and has to train them up and teach them what they need to know. Kiley said she's never wrote a bench memo in law school. So we are just, it's fascinating to us. We're learning so much about how it all works. She's learning, and she said everyone at the courts is so nice. They have a law library and law librarians, and they have staff members, support staff members, and everyone knows that all these young kids are new and they've never done this before. And she said everyone is just, it's like a whole helping environment. And yeah, she's super happy. She's really enjoying it. She says, I've learned so much about writing, Mom, and I was a good writer before, and now I've learned so much about writing already. And yeah, so it's just been really fun to watch her do this thing that we've never had a lawyer in the family. So we didn't know any of that. I assume many of you probably don't know some of that either. I hope I get it all right, because it's of course secondhand from her, and she's not allowed to share any of the cases that she's working on. That's all confidential and that kind of thing. But yeah, so a couple pieces of news there to get started today. Let's talk about a recipe this week. I have a recipe that I have not made, but I cannot wait to make. We are going to have this tomorrow night. This is easy meatball sliders with Hawaiian rolls. So you take those Hawaiian square, beautiful, lovely, soft Hawaiian rolls, and you divot out, you cut it in half across the top and lift the top over. Then you divot out the bottom of each of the rolls, or place a pre-cooked meatball in on every bun, and then you put in some marinara sauce and some cheese. Does that not sound delicious to just make little tiny meatball sliders? How easy, right? The reason that I'm going to make it is because they had these homemade meatballs at the grocery store in the meat department, and they were Italian seasoned, and I bought a package not knowing what I would make with them, but then I saw this and I was like, that is perfect. That is brilliant. So it just takes 1 package of, the rolls and 15 meatballs, a half a jar of your favorite pasta sauce, some mozzarella cheese, some Parmesan cheese. Yeah, you just heat up your meatballs. Ours are frozen, or you make meatballs, which you could do too. But I just thought that would be, and have a side salad or a broccoli or green beans or green vegetable of some kind, and you'd have a little meal. So I am looking forward to that. Comfort food, it's the fall. Ross made chili. A week ago we had very cold temperatures, and he made chili, so we have half of that in the freezer still. Okay, let's do the sweater of the week. This is an oldie but a goodie. This is the Pea Shoot Pullover. It is by Cathy Carron. Came out in Interweave Knits in 2011. It is an Aran weight summer sweater, which is kind of an oxymoron, right? Because in the summer, do you really want to wear an Aran weight? But it is short sleeved and quite full, and I made a size too big. So I don't wear it as much as I probably would if it were a size smaller. It's just a little full in the body, and I didn't make it probably long enough to be like tunic length. So I have started to wear it over like a dress, and then it styles much better more recently. So it is 22 stitches to 4 inches, which to me is not an Aran weight gauge at all. So it's just a little confusing, and I think that's why I had trouble I didn't quite get gauge, and so mine turned out larger. It is made with Shulana Merino Cotton 90, and I did use that yarn on mine, and it's just a ribbed, kind of a fully ribbed top that just starts out with like a 2x2 or 1x1 rib, and then goes down to like a 5x1 rib. It has just yarn over eyelets for the increases, so super easy to knit. I would definitely make it again. I would just make it a size smaller. It just got a little a little too wide for me. There are 24 projects on Ravelry, so it has been knit a number of times, and the pattern is $7.99. So yeah, I really like it in the red. I have a, I think you guys have seen it on the podcast. I have like a fireworks sweater, fireworks dress that I got from Kohl's, which is just like out of a jersey kind of material, just real, it's just a tunic, a sleeveless. So I throw that on underneath there, and then I was like so much happier with the sweater. I was like, oh, that makes this easier to wear and cuter to style. So there you go. Pea shoot pullover. Today I'm wearing my orange ranunculus sweater again. I wore this on my little update that I did, that I was gonna skip a podcast episode. So if you didn't see that, there was like a little, I don't even know if it was 5 minutes. I was sitting outside the library waiting for the library knitters to come, and I thought, oh, and I had this on that day. I had a little sweater, a little dress underneath it, but I had to buy 2 more skeins of this yarn because when I originally knit the pink and white one, I hadn't decided if I wanted to make the pink with the white or the orange with the white. So I ordered the orange, and then when it came, I really liked the contrast of the pink and the white better. This is a soft orange. It's called sherbet, and or sherbet, and I didn't like it with the white as much, so I ended up buying a second 2 more skeins in order to have enough to make it just in the solid color. So I just followed all my notes. It's knitted a much smaller gauge than the original, which is knit with like fingering and mohair to make it DK, and this is more of a DK to worsted, so I knitted at a smaller gauge on a smaller needle and just did a bunch of, and I talked about that when I did the pink and white one, and yeah, I like the way it turned out. It's a very quick knit. Does not take long at all. This is definitely still cropped. I did it short so that I just wore dresses underneath it. So when you don't have long sleeves and you don't have a long sweater, even when you're casting on a bigger bust size, it can work up so much more quickly. So that's lovely. Okay. And then here we have the shawl of the week. I had this dress on the mannequin. It's not a really good match, but I thought, whatever, doesn't really matter. This is the Ziggity shawl by Kirsten Kapur, and this shawl is old yarn. I had this yarn forever and had put it aside to make this shawl, and it's like a golden orange with a dark purple. It came out in 2011. Kirsten Kapur is Through the Loops, so if you are familiar with her business, this was knit with fingering or light fingering, 17 stitches to 4 inches, $6 pattern. The 2-color Ziggity shawl is shaped with 2 increases on every row. The top edge curves slightly up at the center back to give added protection to the neck on cold days. The bottom edge has a gentle curve, which may be blocked to soft points as shown, or with a straight edge. Simple garter stitch gives way to a lively zigzag lace pattern. Experiment with color. Try working each section of the zigzag in a different yarn, or work the garter stitch in a variegated yarn. So there are just tons of options with this. It's about a 550 yard shawl, so it's not gigantic. It's 72 inches long and 18 inches deep. So, you know, 2 skeins. If you've got 2 skeins of fingering weight and you're just looking for a 2 skein shawl, this is a great little shawl. I think the part about it is that this lace section, which is just a lot of yarn over knit 2 togethers, opens it up so much that it works up really quickly. So if you are looking for something that grows, you know, there's not a ton of repeats in this, not a ton of rows, but then it just works up really quickly because it opens up so well, you know, blocking that lace, then all of a sudden your shawl is big, which is lovely. I would then highly recommend it for that purpose. So yeah, garter and lace. It's just got kind of that long kind of crescent shape, 2 colors. So there you go. So I've been doing a little bit of knitting. I didn't knit for the first, I don't know, maybe 8-9 days that I was home. And I said to Ross, once I start knitting, you'll know that I'm feeling better. And then I just couldn't think. I couldn't concentrate. So I was just picking out stuff that was just super simple, stockinette in the round. And I cast on a V-neck pullover, which is a knitting pure and simple pattern. And if you've been around knitting forever, you will know the knitting pure and simple patterns. But if you are a newer knitter, you might not recognize that name. They used to be in all the yarn stores prior to Ravelry back in the day, and even during the early years of Ravelry, when Ravelry hadn't really been picked up by a lot of yarn stores. You would go into the yarn store and they would be these gold patterns that had been Xeroxed on gold paper. And so you always knew they were knitting pure and simple patterns. But I decided that I had this knitted wit yarn in the color called Autumn Rainbow. Can you just see how much color is in that yarn? I mean, it's just glorious. But, you know, I certainly could not knit something that had a pattern in it or that was highly textured or anything like that. I just needed a really simple pattern. So this is just a top-down V-neck. I haven't put the collar on yet. I have the sleeve almost done. Quite a bit here. I'm getting close to doing the ribbing. I did alternate skeins throughout. I alternated 3 skeins on the body for a while and then 2 skeins on the sleeves just to try to get it to not pool. I did have some pooling toward the bottom where I just had a big section of yellow kind of stacking on itself and I didn't catch it right away. So this week I decided, okay, you better rip back. So I probably ripped back 12 or 15 rounds and put it back on the needle and started with a new skein so that it would break up that. I just didn't want to have a big, you can see here where we've got some, this is upside down, but it was really starting to pool again. And so I decided I didn't want that. So I ripped back some and now you can tell that it's not going to pool anymore. So I would highly recommend the pattern. It only came in maybe 4 sizes, but it's just a simple top down. All I really needed is the numbers to cast on because I've knit enough sweaters for myself that I kind of know where I'm headed and what numbers I need to achieve and how full the bust needs to be in the, the waist and the sleeves and that kind of thing. So I've just been putzing away on this, just kind of working it out. I don't know how it's going to read. It might read like a circus. But anyway, I love knitted wit yarn. She has the squishiest base. I don't know where she gets her yarn, but if you've never knit with knitted wit in her DK worsted heavier Aran weight yarn, I highly recommend her yarn. Go out and get yourself a skein and see if you don't agree. I knit this Atta sweater back in the day, so I grabbed it because this was knit out of knitted wit as well. This was a rainbow pack that I got from Darn It Anyway a number of years ago, and I got all this kind of Aran worsted to Aran weight skeins of yarn, and then I just striped my Atta little sweater in that. But again, I love the way it works up. It doesn't pill a lot. I've worn this 100 times and it's just clean, and the base is very squishy. It is, like I said, probably like a heavy worsted to Aran weight, but yeah, I would highly recommend her yarn, Knitted Wit, W-I-T, if you've never used that before. Then I have recently had this idea to knit up some little pillows. I did have a number of people after the Knitwords book came out say that they wanted to knit the pillow, but they haven't done a lot of color work and they were concerned. And so I decided to come up with a tiny pillow concept. So this is my little pillow idea. It is just a little like sachet. I put 4 pom-poms on each corner. It says knit, yarn, and purl on both sides. So you could knit it up for a friend. You could put lavender or scent or essential oils on it, and they could just sit it. Wouldn't have to do the pom-poms, or you could. I made a first one. This was my prototype, and I didn't get my spacing quite right. I didn't like the way the spacing worked out, and so I had to move things around, and then I decided that yarn, being the longer word, needed to be in the middle, so I changed things up a bit. But this is my blue palette, and this is a green palette. This is yarns that I had left over from the Knitwords book. And then, because I was getting crazy and I was knitting these last week, I thought, oh gosh, I have a friend with a birthday coming up, and so I made her a little pillow that says "Save the Bees" on it. And then she wasn't at knitting last week for her birthday, so I need to still give that to her, but I'll put a picture in so that you can see that one. And then when I got that one done, I had another friend who was having a birthday, and her Ravelry name is Knitroverted. Her name is Renee, and she has Knitroverted on Instagram and on Ravelry, and so I decided I could make a pillow out of that. So I made her a long pillow and put the little pom-poms on the end and gifted that to her last week. We went to brunch on Monday with Matt and Renee and I, and because we hadn't seen her in a little while, and we got together for her birthday, and so that was kind of fun, and gave her a skein of yarn, pink yarn, 'cause she's a pink lover. But anyway, so I had this idea to do these little sachets, and someone suggested that I make one that says "Knit Happy" on it, which I think would be really fun. And then I had an idea to do for the rest of my friends for Christmas, their names charted. And I have charting software, so it's pretty easy for me to make a chart up. But I need to have these little pillows test knit, and so I'm going to send out a note to my test knitters. And if someone wants to test knit but wants me to put different words on a pillow, so if you come up with something clever or cute, I could chart it for you, and then we could get some pillows made up with different names on them. So different sayings or things. I want them to kind of remain small. But anyway, I thought that might be kind of fun. So I thought I would show them today. Then if a number of you are on my testing list to test knit and sample knit things for me, and I have a couple of books in the works. It's been slow going this summer, but I have written up my letter to go to a publisher, and I'm afraid to send it, and I just need to send it and move forward. And I just keep looking at it, and I think once I send it, then it's done, it's out there, and I should have more work done on it before I send it. And I just keep talking myself out of sending the letter, and I just need to send the proposal letter and get it done. But anyway, so I have a couple of other items. I have some other sample and test knits that I need to send out as well. I have a sock for December, which I'm not sure I'm going to get done, so I'm going to need some really fast sock knitters to get a sock turned around for me in the next 2 weeks. Oh, anyway, and I don't have it finished because I just been not quite with it, and I'm trying to give myself grace, right? And just say, you know what, you had a major surgery. Sometimes things have to get pushed back, but I just haven't quite been able to get back to like working on the computer for several hours, and I just get tired, and then I go sit in the chair, and then I just watch TV. So let's move on to that. What have I been watching? Because I think this is so funny. I have been watching Alaskan Bush People. Have you guys watched the show? I think they're on their 10th season. I think I got it recommended to me because I watched that show alone, and then you get these recommendations. And I really just wanted something where I could just leave it on, play, and if I dozed in the chair or whatever, it wouldn't really matter that much. Well, now I'm like 7 seasons into this show, and I haven't been able to find it for free anymore. So I've had to purchase, which I think it only cost me $7.99, but it's about this family who goes to Alaska to live off the land, and they have been living up there for many, many years, but they continually make poor choices. And so you just can't look away. They make bad decisions, bad things happen to them, and it's not all their fault. They get run off the land by some people who don't want them up there with all the television crews. And so men from town come in the dark of night with guns to run them off. And they threaten the crews that are doing all the filming, and so they have to leave. I mean, and so then they move to a different part of Alaska, and they get a boat, and they have done commercial fishing and boating before, and then the boat sinks. I mean, they have had some rough luck. So it's a father and his wife and their 7 children, and they're all grown. The youngest when I started watching was like 12, and now she's 20 or whatever, 19. And so I've been watching a number of seasons of it, and then I'll watch something else, then I go back to it because I think what happened to them. And then so I don't want to say that it's the best thing, but if you've never watched it and you kind of like that survival stuff, maybe it would be of interest to you. It was many seasons, and sometimes I just need something on. It's what keeps me knitting. If I have something to sit in the chair, and it just keeps, which is what happened with the next I started watching, which is Ink Masters on Netflix. I am not a tattoo person. I don't have a tattoo. But back in the day, I used to watch a show on, that channel about the tattoo artists. And so I saw this come up, and I was like, I think I started with season 3 because 1 and 2 weren't available. And this is the one with Dave Navarro. And they have like 16 tattooers that come in, and they get a challenge every week, and then they do a tattoo, and then they vote them off. But again, I can just kind of be in the chair, kind of listening, kind of watching my knitting, working on something with the chart, looking down and up, and it's not too big a deal. You don't have to be glued to the TV to watch it. So anyway, Ink Masters, I watched that. I finished watching Call the Midwife, which I can't recommend to everyone, because there's a birth of a baby on almost every show, and that can be hard to watch, but the stories are so heartwarming, and you cry almost every episode. You just, the way that London and Europe was left after the World War is just astonishing to me, how people persevered and how they were just left in. There were so many poor, and it's just such a good show. And then I watched New Amsterdam, which is the show about the hospital in New York City. And the guy says, "What can I do to help?" all the time. The doctor, that's his line. What can I do to help? And I have been watching that since the beginning. And so I watched the most recent season of New Amsterdam. I watched Grey's Anatomy back in the day too, so I've been, that's been on for 20 years or whatever, and so those hospital kind of shows I like. Then I watched a couple of movies. I watched Bakery in Brooklyn, which is about 2 young women who are left this bakery, and they argue about how to run it and how it should be run and who should run it and how that all goes. And so it was kind of a little Hallmark movie-ish. I don't think it was a Hallmark movie, but kind of like that. So it was okay. And then I watched a show called I Used to Be Famous, which was an interesting movie. It is about a guy who was a pop star, and then he meets a drummer who has autism, and he wants to encourage him to perform and be in a band, and he has autism, and the mother's not sure that he should do that. So it was kind of a feel-good movie. And I just watched last night, I watched The Age of Adaline, which is a woman who gets in a car accident and then doesn't age. So she stays 29 for many, many, many years, and she can't tell anyone because then she's afraid that they'll want to just do studies on her and figure out what happened to her. And so it's a story of her living her life and then kind of running from life to life, getting away from people who become close to her. It's Blake Lively, who I really like. Yeah, it was good, I have to say. I enjoyed it. Okay, then I have some things I saw on the internet and some audiobooks to share before we close out. If you have not seen the Stephen West video, Shawl After Shawl, where he rewrites the words and does a music video, it is so good. I'll put a little blurb in. I don't know if YouTube, it's on YouTube, so I don't think it would be a problem for me to put a little blurb in so you can see, but go over to the Stephen West YouTube channel and watch his video called Shawl After Shawl.
Lying on the couch, I count my works in progress, just one or two. Caught up in circulars, I'm yearning for something.
So good. Then I noticed that there's a new Miss Babs sweater collection email that came out, and the collection is called the European Collection by Kirsten Michelle. And oh my goodness, are there some beautiful sweaters in this book. Just inspiration. Let me just read a bit, it'll be quicker. This collection of patterns is inspired by the traditions of Ireland, the British Isles, Latvia, Iceland, the Faroe Islands, and Sweden. Inspired is the key word here. They're not replica of the traditions in either construction, method, color, or charts. I have rather tried to achieve an overall aesthetic that reflects the traditions in a contemporary way, using my favorite construction method, which is top-down seamless yoke or raglan sweater. The sweaters are gorgeous. I'll put some pictures in. There are a total of, there are 6 patterns total, and she did just a beautiful job. I just think, and I hadn't seen anything about it. The ebook is $21 on Ravelry, so you can get all of them at once. I don't remember if they're available. I think they might also be available individually. But it's in European Collection Part 1. Highly recommend you go over and take a look at those. And I saw this cute hat. I think it was on the Stephen B website. It's called the Graffiti Hat. It's by Elena Nodal. It came out in 2013. It's a striped hat with cabled, raised, interlocking lines. I want to knit it. I just think it looks so cool looking. The pattern says I wanted to create a design that is very unique, unisex, and is suitable for all age groups. A design that will also allow me to use my multitude of leftover yarns. I also love cables in my knits and always look for different ways to incorporate them into my designs. This design made me think of graffiti style artwork. It's like a blank canvas where you can create with colors, pair up the most outrageous combinations for a very stunning effect. So I thought I would share that because I just thought it was fascinating construction, interesting concept. There are like 188 projects out there, so lots of people knit it, but I had never seen it. And then on Instagram, I saw this darling knitted table cover. So they knitted legs to cover the legs of a table, and then they knit a little topper, and it is so cute. If you have an eclectic house, you have lots of knitting around like I do, I was thinking it'd be, if you had a coffee table you could cover, you could knit, cover a side table, an ottoman. Just the ideas are boundless. I thought it was such a cute video that they did that I just wanted to share with all of you. So making a table cover, I will link it in the show notes to Instagram so you can go over and watch the whole video if I can't get it. grandmother's Missouri farm with her husband and baby son, and she learns that the lessons that most enrich our lives often come unexpectedly. The family has given Kate the job of convincing Grandma Rose, who's become increasingly stubborn and forgetful, to move off her beloved land and into a nursing home. But Kate knows such a change would break her grandma's heart, so she goes home to the family. You know, you can kind of tell what's coming, but I enjoyed it. It was an easy listen. So I would highly recommend that one for sure. Then I listened to The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. She's the Minnesota author that I talked about. I really like her books. She has a way with her writing of kind of grabbing you and bringing you in. It's very much based on conversations. Her characters are a little quirky, off the cuff, fun, lighthearted, just very conversational style, which I really like. Kristen Peterson doesn't do drama, will fight to the death for her friends, and has no room in her life for guys who just don't get her. She's also keeping a big secret, facing a medically necessary procedure that will make it impossible for her to have children. Planning her best friend's wedding is bittersweet for Kirsten, especially when she meets the best man, Josh. So, romance, lighthearted, but the story is very good. Trigger warning for people who have infant loss, fertility, infertility. I had a ton of fertility issues, but that's forefront in this book. So if that would bother you, then I wouldn't recommend it. And then the last one is the one I just finished yesterday. It took me forever. I wanted to like it. It was very sad in the end. Just tore your heartstrings. But it's called When All Is Said. It's by Anne Griffin. It won awards, so it probably should get a high ranking from me. If you had to pick 5 people to sum up your life, who would they be? If you were to raise a glass to each of them, what would you say? At a bar of a grand hotel in a small Irish town sits 84-year-old Maurice Hannigan. He's alone as usual, though tonight is anything but. Pull up a stool and charge your glass because Maurice is finally ready to tell his story. So he goes through in an evening the story of these 5 different people in his life. And he is a sad old man who has made some mistakes in his life, as have we all, right? And so I think therein lies the lesson that we can become bitter and enraged and angry with people and have a falling out with people over time, and eventually what that does to you as a person, and if you hold those grudges, and what can happen. And it was only 8 hours, and I just had a really hard time listening. The reader was good. The storyline was just the story of his life and what had happened to him with these different individuals who came into his life at different times. And I just think I needed something more fast-paced or upbeat that would have helped me lay in the chair and listen. It just wasn't the right perfect book for the perfect time where I'm at. If I'd have been out and about more in the car, I think listening would have been not a problem. So again, let me know if you've read this, When All Is Said, or any of the audiobooks. Let me know if you read them and if you like them. There is an audiobook thread in the Ravelry group. If you can go over, you can add books that you would recommend for me. The list of all the books I've ever talked about is there. But you can also comment there about books, and people can talk about books over there as well, or you can just drop a comment in the box below. So there you go. There are 4 books of the week this week. And then just to finish off today, Kiley called on her way home. Monday I was napping. I did not answer. She doesn't call very often. She's not a good phone talker. I've talked about that before too. Neither am I sometimes. But she called back, and there was a FaceTime video. I had woken up, I answered it, and she had gone home and gotten Stevie and brought him back over to the Capitol in St. Paul where she works, because they had sheep and goats grazing on the hill right next to the Capitol. And she got these great pictures, which I will put in. They're doing that landscape management technique where they bring in And the hill is super steep. And she said it's between like a low highway and then like a walkway and a parking lot. But you could see the grass that needed to be chopped down right in front of the giant Capitol building. And Kiley works just to the left of this picture in a red roofed building, which is the government center. But she's on the Capitol grounds all the time where it's very high security and but there are also lots of people around. And she's like, Mom, you just had to see this. And I couldn't believe it. So I went home and got Stevie because it was just so cool to see them. She said there was a truck there, like a landscapes management small truck there watching them, that they had set up a fence and that they were all in there just grazing. And she's like, they're sheep, they're sheep. And I said, are you sure they're not goats? And she's like, Mom, I know the difference between sheep and goats. She said, I walked right by them. But then on the news later, Ross saw that there were goats too. And she said, yes, there were goats further up the road, but that these were sheep. And so I thought, well, I have to share that with all of you because that's just cool that they're using sheep. I knew that they used goats for like buckthorn and to get rid of pastures and things like that. But it was kind of fun that your daughter, who knows, you know, the whole sheep to wool connection, would call you. Also, go home, get her boyfriend, and bring him back so she could videotape with her mother and show her the sheep on the hill, which was kind of fun. Okay, we have a giveaway to do, and so thank you for all the lovely comments. We had 145 comments on the podcast from 2 times ago where I had this bag to give away. So I did the random number generator between 1 and 145, and then I was just going to count down, and you're never going to believe it, but it picked 1, number 1. I've never had that happen before. I've seen it happen on other podcasts. I should take a picture and put it in because I was just shocked. But Edina Cole, you were the first commenter that was in my list when I opened up the podcast on YouTube. You were the first commenter, and so you win the bag. And Edina is often a commenter for me. I know her a little bit just via Instagram, doing test knitting, talking to her. Edina's in law school, so we've gone back and forth a little bit about that. Anyway, so I just wanted to share that you are getting the bag from the Irish Knitter. I don't know that I have your address, so I'm going to ask you to have one more skein of this Swift Yarns. It is sock weight in the pumpkin spice colorway. I had ordered a couple of other skeins in the DK weight, and so I have this one to give away with a little stitch marker. And so if you are interested in winning that, just put a comment in the notes below and I will draw a winner. You can just say yarn if you don't have a comment to make, but you can also comment on the podcast or whatever. It's just easy for me to just go to the comments and pull a winner for this. So there you go. Swift Yarns, pumpkin spice, perfect time of year for that. And we will get that given away. All right, I think that's all I have for you this time. We'll get this edited and uploaded. I am happy to be back and feeling like I'm on the mend. I definitely have some strengthening to do. I spent a lot of time sitting prior to my surgery because I had that tear in my labrum. And so I feel like if I had gone into my surgery a little stronger in that leg or in both my legs, I just wasn't walking. I hadn't been walking much since July. I was really struggling. And so I spent a lot of time, well, in July I had that injection and then I was walking and things were great and I was exercising and then it all went to heck. So yeah, I just have I definitely have, I'm up to 25 leg lifts and I need to be able to to do a few more. Another couple weeks and I should be back full steam and maybe not napping every afternoon. My eye is twitching. I guess I need a banana. Is that what they say? If you have an eye twitch, you're stressed or you need potassium. Oh, don't ask me. I don't know. It's just twitching. Anyway, signing off this week. No green bananas. Waddle on. Don't complain with your mouth full. You'll never regret ripping back. Keep your fork. Keep it colorful. Come in for your hug. I love you all. Thanks so much for keeping in touch and hanging in there with me while I took a little break there. It's good to be back, and I will see you in a couple weeks. Bye.